may or may not have seen the recent series that I featured on my blog entitled The Spring Edit, which was basically a look at kind of different spring products that I kind of switch into my routine when it gets a little bit warmer outside. So I did the spring nail varnish colours, spring fragrances, and now I'm going to talk about spring makeup. So basically all the products that I kind of include into my routine when we come into spring. So the first category is foundation and bases, and when it comes to spring I like a nice sort of light, dewy kind of look to my skin, and I don't like to wear any foundations that are really heavy because the feeling of wearing a really thick heavy foundation when it's warm outside, when it's sunny, is just kind of unbearable. So I like to pick things that feel quite light and fresh on the skin but still give me a moderate amount of coverage. So BB creams and tinted moisturisers are probably most people's idea of a really light, fresh base, and when I'm having a good skin day, which does happen even though it's quite a rare occasion, I like to use a Dr. Jart Waterfuse BB cream because it gives, you know, a decent amount of coverage. It's still very light, but it will still kind of even out any redness or kind of like imperfections, but it's just a very lightweight feeling product and it doesn't kind of clog up the skin too much. It's also got a really lovely radiant glow to it. It's obviously packed full of moisture because it's a BB cream, but it's also from their Waterfuse line, which is I think mainly for hydration, so it just gives the skin a really fresh look. Some days I will need a little bit more coverage, and for that I go for the YSL Le Teint Touche Éclat foundation, and again this is a really lovely radiant one, gives the skin a lovely glow, but it just has a little bit more coverage to, you know, even everything out a little bit more. I find this one doesn't last quite as well as some of the other foundations I use, so I will make sure I always have a primer under it, but it really gives a lovely kind of smooth effect to the skin. And then for days when my skin's just being kind of normal, I've got things to cover but nothing too horrendous, I've been using the Bourjois Healthy Mix, and this is the new version. This is the Radiance Revealed, which is just a little bit more glowing than the original, and it just really smooths out the skin, you know, nothing too heavy again, but it just gives you a really lovely glow. This also smells amazing. It's got a really fruity, fresh smell to it. But with all of those, if I kind of still don't feel that they're giving me quite enough radiance, if my skin's feeling a little bit dull, a bit lackluster, I will mix in a little bit of Benefit's High Beam, and this is just a liquid highlighter. It's got a slight pinky tinge to it. They do a more warm tone one which is called Sunbeam, but I'll just put a drop of this on my hand and mix it with my foundation, and it just adds to that glow but without being overly glittery and overly shiny. So moving on to the second category, and colour, which is sort of bronzers and blushes, and if you've been watching my videos recently you should know that I'm becoming slightly obsessed with the Bourjois Bronzing Primer, and I don't actually use this as a primer, I like to use it as a bronzer. So it's got a lovely kind of creamy consistency. It's almost slightly moussey but not drying at all, and I just take this on a Real Techniques buffing brush and literally buff it into my skin, and it just blends in absolutely seamlessly. You get just the nicest sort of warm bronze natural glow but without looking like you've put a lot of bronzer on. If I do want to go for a powder, so if I want my skin to look just a little bit more matte, I will always pick up the Clarins Bronzing Duo, and this is such a beautiful powder product. It's got two colours, so you can go a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, or like I generally tend to do, just mix them together. And I find with this you can't put too much on, you can't make your skin look orange with this at all. It's a very kind of sheer colour but it still gives you a nice glow, a nice bit of warmth. But it's just a really easy product to use as well. So when it comes to blushes, I do have a slightly wider selection, but I've picked out 3 today that are my kind of real summer colours, and the first one is Stila Convertible colour in Gerbera, and I love cream blushes for spring. I think they just again give your cheeks a lovely sheeny glow to them without looking too cakey like a powder can do sometimes, but I'm obsessed with this blusher as well. It's such a lovely pinky colour, and the formula of it is really pigmented too, so you don't need a great deal, but I find it really sticks to the skin instead of some cream blushes that can sometimes get a little bit patchy, kind of come off throughout the day. This one just really stays put all day. So the second cream blush I have is from Bourjois, and it's the cream blush in Nude Velvet, and this is such a soft pink colour. It's almost slightly bordering on a peach, but it's not got really much orangey colour to it, but it just gives you the softest sort of flush to the cheeks. It's nothing too bright, but it just really gives you that little bit of pink tint. It's not quite as creamy as the Stila one, it's more of a cream to powder finish, but it still sits really nicely on the skin. And then I do have a powder product here, and this is from Sleek. I absolutely love their blushes. I think they're seriously pigmented, really great price, and there's a really great range as well. But this, now don't be afraid, this is Pixie Pink, and you can tell, I'm not sure if it's showing up on camera quite as bright as it is, but it is a seriously standout pink. But I find just a tiny bit of this, just dusted onto the cheeks, gives a really kind of soft, kind of baby pink shade to the cheeks. It's nothing bright at all. It doesn't come out like this unless you obviously kind of plaster it on, but it just gives you a really natural flush. So when it comes to eyes, I just like to keep it quite light and quite natural, you know, nothing too dark and intense. And most of the time I'll just pick up my NAC neutral palette, which has kind of really subtle kind of browny, pinky shades in it. And my most used colour I think is All That Glitters, which is just the perfect kind of like pinky, goldy, shimmery nude. It's just a really lovely colour, especially for spring. And then I just sort of mix in a little bit of a darker colour, so I've got Soba here, or sometimes Woodwinked, and just put that in the outer corner, so just keeping it really simple. I do also like to wear cream eyeshadows, and there's a couple here that I really like. This is Maybelline Colour Tattoo 24 Hour in On and On Bronze, and it's just a really kind of cool brownie colour. It's very light on the lid, it doesn't come out too pigmented, but it just gives you a little wash of colour. And then I have the Stila Smudge Pot in Kitten, and this is a very similar colour to MAC All That Glitters, maybe a little bit lighter, but again it's that sort of champagne-y, pinky nude colour. So again, keeping things quite bright and quite fresh looking, I like to use a nude pencil on my waterline. So I've got the Rimmel Scandalised waterproof pencil here, and this is literally the best one I found. It's really pigmented, really stays on well, and it just really brightens up the eyes. And then last of all, lip products. So I either like to go for something quite glossy and light, quite sheer, or something with just a nice kind of like spring colour to it. I've really been loving the Revlon lip butters at the moment. I've got Juicy Papaya and Wild Watermelon here, and they just give you a really kind of light wash of colour. They're not too pigmented, but they've got a nice kind of moisturising texture to them. I also really like to use lip crayons because they generally have that really sheer texture to them again, quite moisturising. So some of my favourites are the Sexy Mother Pucker Gloss Stick from Soap and Glory in Futuristic, and the Revlon Just Bitten Kissable Balm Stain, and this is in the shade Rendezvous. It's more of a kind of corally orange. So if I do want to go for something a bit more full on, a bit more colour, I really like the Bourjois Rouge Edition lipsticks. And these are still quite light, they're not really kind of matte or thick or cakey, they've got a nice glossy sheen to them, but they're really pretty summer colours. So those are my spring makeup picks, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks so much for watching, and if you do want to see the first 2 posts from the spring series, I will link them below.